Hi, welcome to Chad's Silversmithing. Before we get too far into the video, if you wouldn't mind hitting the like button, that really helps to get my channel promoted, and I really appreciate that. I also love it when people leave comments. If you have a suggestion for a video, you have a question about this one, if you want to share how you do something, or you just want to say hi, those are all great, and I love to hear from you. So today I'm going to do kind of a simple, clean pendant. I'm going to do something that I haven't tried before. I'm going to create kind of a little spoon shape behind it to see if that brings more light to the stone. And I think it'll be kind of an interesting, modern looking little simple piece. So we'll give it a try and see how it turns out. I've picked out a green tourmaline that I bought years ago. It's a teardrop shape, and I didn't measure it, so I'll measure it when we get to that stage. And then we'll make a little setting for that, and we'll come up with the overall piece. Before we do that, I wanted to thank some groups of people. My patrons over on Patreon are my core group of supporters, and I just had a live stream with them, and I wanted to thank them for joining. Those of you who showed up, I really appreciate it, and it's nice to see you and chat with you, so thanks for that. Thank you to all of my patrons, though, for their kind support financially, and also for creating such a nice environment over there. There's a bunch of cool people there who are really talented, and I really enjoy interacting with them. So thanks for that. You guys are awesome, and I appreciate it. My other group is my YouTube subscribers. We're about to pass 20,700, which is amazing. Thank you for that. I never thought I would get to that point as far as subscribers, but thank you. I do really appreciate the kind comments that you all leave. Occasionally, actually pretty frequently, I get really moving comments from people telling me that they've gotten something valuable out of these, or it's helped them to kind of restart what they used to do, or things like that. And that really makes me feel good, so thanks for that. I appreciate it. I do also appreciate the Buy Me a Coffees and the Super Thanks. That stuff really helps with the crazy cost of materials right now, so thanks for that. All right, well, let's get started on this piece and see what we can create. This is one of my design idea sketchbooks you can get on the merch store. This particular model has a American wire gauge chart, which converts it into inches and then to millimeters, and I find that pretty useful. And I know a lot of people overseas do too, because they don't use American wire gauge, which is understandable. I like them because they provide a space for me to draw up my ideas, as well as having useful charts on the back. And the graph pattern in the background I find particularly useful to help me keep things kind of lined up straight and everything, because drawing is not my primary skill, as you may notice as we go along. So, like I said, I wanted to do something modern and kind of interesting with a kind of a reflective piece behind it. And I did some pre-work here just to save some time on the video. I cut myself an oval, and just the other day I did a video about some of the things that I find useful. And I used one of these. I cut it out this size, which was 18 millimeters, I think. And then I domed it a little bit on a dapping block like this. And then I flattened it back out a little bit from behind, so I laid it flat on the surface, so it's more like a spoon shape. And I'm going to use that for the back piece there. I cut out a couple of lozenge shaped pieces for my bail. I'm going to make kind of a sandwich bail, what I call a sandwich bail. If you want to see some other types of bails, there's a good video about it right here. And here's the stone that I am going to set. It's a little green tourmaline. Well, not little, it's pretty good sized, I guess. Let's see how big it actually is. It's about it's pretty close to 10. So like a 5 by 10 teardrop shape. Let's write that on there just for giggles. And so I thought, in order to make this, I'm going to make a little setting for this out of some 16 gauge square wire, which is 1.3 millimeters. And it's going to be not very much tapered, as much as just straight up and down to raise it up a little bit. This particular stone has a deep pavilion on it. If you can see that, it looks like a boat. So we need to compensate for that, but it's going to kind of rest above this little shape here. So this needs to be behind the stone, and so I'm going to have two pieces of wire coming out from between these two pieces of my sandwich bale. Up here on top, I'm going to put some 14 gauge round wire, probably vertically, so that it allows for a slot for the chain to go through, kind of right through there. And we'll solder in these two pieces of wire that are going to hold both the spoon-shaped piece and the setting above it, is my plan. Okay, if you look at it from the side, it's going to look kind of like that. And so for the wires that are going to be kind of projecting out of there, for the spoon part, I took some 10 gauge square wire and I flattened it out a little bit in the rolling mill to, I don't know, a little more than a millimeter thick, and then I flared it out with a hammer. So I'm going to try and get it to solder on there and merge nicely into that, and we'll use that as our kind of connection point for this. For the one that attaches to the setting, I'm going to use some 12 gauge flattened square wire that's maybe a little bit thinner, but I will also flare that out, and I'm probably going to cut a notch in it so that I can solder it right to the base of that setting. But we'll see how that works. I'm kind of playing this by ear a little bit. So to start with, let's make a setting out of this 16 gauge square wire for this thing. And we're going to start by making two teardrop shapes that are pretty much exactly the same size as this. And at least that's going to be the goal. So let me find my bale making pliers. I'm going to make it a little bit longer than I think I need. I could have gone a lot shorter than that probably, but I have enough to work with, so I think we'll do this. With square wire, when you bend it sharply like that, it's going to try and twist on you a little bit. It kind of bulges up there, so once we get this all kind of sized right, then I'll be able to flatten it back out a little bit more. So. Now there's two ways you can do this. You could cut them both with a saw or something straight up and down like that. Or we could scratch a line right here and then solder that to the side of this one, which I think is sometimes a little bit easier. So we'll cut it off a little bit shy of that, and then we'll file it down. That's not too bad. It's close enough to where I can file it a little bit and probably make it work. Kind of along this angle now. And then I think we can go ahead and solder that together. So set him to the side for a little bit. Try not to lose track of him. If you haven't been to my channel before, I use hard silver sheet solder for most everything. I probably will use a little bit of easy paste solder on this one at some point, but to start with, let's use some hard solder. I use a liquid flux that I dribble on with a dropper bottle. My torch is a Silversmith model. It's their acetylene air torch. It just draws in atmospheric air through the little holes here, mixes it with the gas, which is acetylene. There's only one tank for acetylene. I don't need an oxygen tank because it pulls in air through that. It's not as hot as oxyacetylene, but it's not as cool as propane, so it's kind of a nice happy medium. I really like it for silver work. Oh, I had a miss there. So I didn't heat it very evenly apparently. And this side of the gap reached soldering temperature before the other side, so what happened is it jumped to the side that was hot enough. That's a frequent occurrence, especially when you're a beginner, and I shouldn't have done that. Let's see how we're looking here. It's easier to measure if you set it on top of its the crown instead of the pavilion and get an idea how close we are. I think we're doing okay. So if I do just a tiny bit more filing, that'll be perfect. Close enough. Okay, I'm going to make a second one of those. Theoretically. I think we're about right there. That's not too shabby. So sometimes I do what's called pick soldering, and that's where I pick up a little bit on the end of this titanium soldering pick and place it where I want to. If you're interested, I have a pretty good video up there. You can check it out. It's one of those skills that kind of made it so much easier for me to get solder where I wanted it to go. It's definitely one of the key things I learned when I was figuring this stuff out. I'm feeling like that's close enough, probably, you know? So I'm thinking, if I have this new pad here that's a soft pad. I'm thinking if I want to have these separated but then prongs on the outside, we could probably just put some spacers in here that we cut out after we're done. Might make it a little easier to get it exactly how tall we want it. So let me see if I can find, here's a little bit of scrap. So let's actually do this one on this pad. This soft pad smells a little funny when you heat it up. So I'm going to save my wife's nasal passages. Okay, so let's do this. I'm going to pick a little solder here. There's probably solder here already, but I'm going to put a little bit more there. And then we will put this on here. And we'll try and get this balanced right on top of it. Or you know what? Let's just let's get these little pieces of square wire. I think I'm going to pick it on them instead. Or should I? I don't know. Who knows? Let's see if I can get it to spread out nice and flat on here. That's pretty good. Alright. Now let's make sure there's a little bit of solder on the top of those square wires. Oops, I don't know what I'm doing here. Still need that lit, I guess. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. See if we got it there. Okay, so I'm going to need some prongs that stick up a little bit there. And so I need to cut 4 of them out of this. Hopefully I have enough left here. I think it needs to be more than about like that long. Okay, let's get this stinky soft pad on. Well, that looks reasonably symmetrical. Let's put a little bit more solder and see if we can get those soldered together. There's one, 7 more to go. Okay, we're going to check all of these solder joints and make sure we actually got them soldered. I think they're pretty good. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to cut these off at the bottom here, and I'm going to saw out the little pieces that I soldered in there to keep it separated, and I think we should be pretty good then after that. Oh, I'm also going to use a little a burr to create kind of a, since the pavilion of the stone, get it, you know, it angles inwards like that, so we're going to cut a slope in the top of that inside ring on the teardrop there, so the stone will kind of sit down in there a little bit. Okay, I threw that in the pickle for a little while, and after I did some dremeling, after I did a little dremeling on it, I want this to be soldered down kind of like a spoon to this one, and gradually taper into it. So I think I'm going to take my, if I can find it, half round jeweler's file, and I'm going to file it right to a little bit of a taper. This is that 2.6 millimeter square wire, or 10 gauge ish. What's the worst thing that can happen? Let's give it a try. Sometimes you can use flux because it gets sticky when it gets to a certain stage. Use that as a way to get things to stay in place. It can also work against you sometimes, as in right now. That doesn't look terrible. Let's see how it came out. Imagine in the 70s and 80s, silversmiths made a lot of these little spoons like this. Let's fish that other piece out of the pickle. So I'm going to do some sculpting with my rotary tool to make that kind of smooth into itself. And this I want to mount so it's kind of centered in there, but I want this to be attached on here somewhere. Maybe I could attach it right between the two. I'll file a notch down the middle. Here's my thought. File a little notch in there. First of all, make sure it's sort of symmetrical. Chad. Let's sweat a little solder right onto the end of this, both sides, and then we'll see if we can get it on there. Can I do it without dropping anything off? Guess we'll find out. Most of the mass, again, is in the bigger piece over here, so I'm going to spend most of my time heating that. And then just try and bump that other one up to the right temperature to get these to flow on there. I added just a little bit more hard solder there. Okay, so I'm going to do a little bit of shaping with my rotary tool with an abrasive white wheel to kind of smooth all this together into a single kind of unified thing. And then we'll see how it looks. So, okay, so I bent the end just a little bit like this so that they would stay apart, and I jury-rigged things here with some T-pins and a magnesia block to try and get it in place. I think I'm going to cut myself some solder, and we can see if we can do this without messing anything up. Another option would be to use like medium solder for this to not reflow it, but I think with a little luck I can do this. I have a lot of things all soldered with the same solder, and so if I get it too hot, things could go awry. So I don't for a moment believe that that's a good solder joint, but I think it's not going to matter too much because I'm going to sandwich this between two other pieces of metal. But it is positioned pretty well. So I think my first step is going to be to solder two little upright pieces of 14 gauge round, which I think I have a little piece right here. So let's do that first. Something like this, you can just kind of grab it, set it on a piece of solder to pick it up. Oh, we're going to flux that too, I guess. This one needs to scoot over just a skosh. So our next step is going to be to solder that onto that, like that. Alright, so I think I'm going to use some easy now. If I can find it. This is one of those just-in-case kind of situations. So I'm kind of making this up as I go. I'm always curious to hear how other people would go about it. So if you have a thought as to how you might have done it differently, it's always fun to hear other people's ideas. I want to file this down to where it's about that same height. So how about put just a little bit more easy solder on this part here, this part here, part here. And let's see if we can't get that placed on there nicely. Well, let's cool it off and take a peek at it and see how it looks. I don't know if it's going to just look weird or if it's going to look cool. I feel like it might look cool, but only one way to find out, right? So I'll be back after we... My, good polishing hair, Chad. Okay, so I pruned these prongs down after I finished polishing, and I'm going to bend this up just a little bit again, I think, so I can access it without putting too much pressure on the spoon part. And I do this a little differently than some, but I've kind of gotten those to be relatively skinny, so hopefully I'll be able to push them down like this. You know, a little extra careful around the tip of that. I don't want to accidentally break the tip off of there. So I will do a little bit of cleanup with a blue fine polishing wheel on the Dremel, on the tips of these prongs. And then I will get some better pictures and put them in the at the end of the video. So I think that's going to be pretty cool. That's kind of what I was looking for. It's a little bit bigger scale. It'll be interesting to see once I get it all finished up how it photographs. But I think that's kind of interesting. I think the spoon part gives a little more reflectivity and brings more light to that stone. This is a little bit of a dark tourmaline, and so I think it kind of brightens it up a little bit as far as the way it looks in the light. So tell me what you think. Tell me if you would have done things differently, and let me know. Well, that was the framed tourmaline teardrop pendant, or whatever we decide to call it. If you enjoyed that, make sure to hit the like button before you leave. And I would love it if you'd check out my main channel page. I have tons of content over there, up to 470 something videos, I think. I haven't checked lately. I do 3 per week, one on Tuesday, one on Thursday, and one on Saturday. And so there's lots of content coming out all the time, and there's almost certainly something you'll find useful or interesting over there. So check out a few of those. Make sure to subscribe to my channel. I'd love to have you as a follower. And if you're interested, check the video description down below. There's some important links there. There's a link to my merch store if you want to get yourself one of those nice design idea sketchbooks. I find those invaluable and a great way to keep track of what you've made and what you're making. There's a link to my ebook. My latest one is 2024's tutorial guide, and it's got a page for each of the tutorials I did last year, including a picture of my sketch, a picture of the final piece, a list of materials, difficulty rating, and some notes about the project itself that I didn't talk about in the video itself. But they all have links to the videos themselves, and so it's a great resource, a whole bunch of different projects right at your fingertips, and a super nice way to support my channel. So get yourself one of those. There's even a link to my Patreon if you want to find out more about that really cool community over there and become a part of it. So, all right, well, thanks for watching. Take care. Happy silversmithing.